My husband was a good swimmer. That's the first thing I told the detective when he showed up at my door on a Tuesday morning in November, his face carrying that expression people wear when they have no good news to deliver. Daniel had been swimming since he was 4 years old. He grew up 3 houses from a lake in Michigan. He swam competitively through college. Every summer, he was the first one in the water at our annual lake house trip, cannonballing in while the rest of us were still testing the temperature with our toes. So when Detective Marsh told me that my husband had drowned the night before, alone at 11 p.m. in the lake behind our rental cabin, I didn't cry. I just stared at him and said, "That's not possible." He looked at me with something I now recognize as practiced patience. "Mrs. Calloway, accidents happen even to strong swimmers. He may have hit his head. There was alcohol in his system." Alcohol. Daniel didn't drink. He hadn't touched alcohol in 6 years, not since his father died, and he decided to finally take his health seriously. But I didn't say any of that. I nodded and thanked the detective and closed the door. And then I stood in my kitchen for 20 minutes, staring at the coffee maker, trying to understand how the most capable person I'd ever known had simply ceased to exist. The cabin trip had been Daniel's idea. He'd suggested it in early September, a long weekend with just the 2 of us and his business partner, Marcus, and Marcus's wife, Claire. 4 adults, a rented cabin, and a lake in the Vermont mountains. A way to celebrate the company's best quarter ever. I remember thinking it sounded perfect. Marcus and Daniel had built their financial consulting firm from nothing over 8 years. They'd met in business school, suffered through the early years together, and finally hit their stride. The company was worth something now. Real money, the kind that changes a family's future. Daniel was in good spirits that whole drive up. He played music I liked. He held my hand when I wasn't using it to eat gas station snacks. He seemed lighter than he'd been in months. In hindsight, I wonder if I was misreading him. If the lightness wasn't happiness, but relief. The first 2 days were genuinely lovely. We kayaked. We cooked dinner together. Marcus made everyone laugh with impressions of difficult clients. Claire and I walked the trails and talked about maybe buying a property up here someday. On the 3rd night, Daniel said he wanted to take a walk by the water. He did that sometimes. Alone, to think, especially when something was weighing on him. He kissed me on the forehead, said he'd be back in an hour, and walked out the back door. He never came back. The official investigation lasted 11 days. The medical examiner found water in his lungs, consistent with drowning. There was a bruise on his temple, described as consistent with impact from a rock or submerged object. Combined with the alcohol finding, the conclusion was accidental death. I kept telling people about the alcohol. His doctor confirmed Daniel hadn't had a drink in 6 years. His best friend from college told the detective the same thing. The detective nodded and noted it in his report. And then the case was closed. I understood on some level why. There were no witnesses, no signs of foul play beyond what could easily be explained. A successful man, slightly stressed from a big year, too close to the water's edge at night. These things happened, but I couldn't move forward. I couldn't even start to grieve because grief requires accepting that something is true, and I couldn't accept it. So I started going through his things. Not because I expected to find anything. I was looking for him. For anything that smelled like him, sounded like him. The way you go through someone's belongings after they're gone just to be near them one more time. I found his phone in the chest pocket of the jacket he'd left behind in the cabin closet. His regular phone, the one I already had, the one the police had looked at, was on the nightstand. This was a second phone. It was a cheap prepaid, the kind you buy with cash at a pharmacy. The passcode took me 40 minutes to figure out. It was our dog's birthday, June 3rd, 0603. I don't know what I expected. I think some part of me hoped it would be something boring. A surprise gift for me, something private and innocent that would make me feel foolish for being suspicious. Instead, I found 4 months of text messages with a contact saved only as M. I want to be careful here, because some of what I read wasn't just painful. It was complicated in ways I'm still processing. But the short version is this. Daniel and Marcus had not had a good year. They'd had a catastrophic year, but only one of them knew it. What I read in those messages was a story of a company in crisis, a business partner who had been moving money for 2 years, diverting client funds, hiding it in layers of transactions that would have taken a forensic accountant to unravel. And Daniel, my husband, who'd been living in the same house as me, sleeping in the same bed, had figured it out. He'd been building a case for 8 weeks before that trip. The last text he sent from that phone was the night we arrived at the cabin. It said, "I'm going to give him one chance to make it right. If he doesn't, I go to the lawyers Monday." I didn't go back to the detective. Not yet. I hired a private investigator, and then I hired a forensic accountant through a law firm without telling anyone what I'd found. What they uncovered over the next 3 months took my breath away. Not because of the scale of it, though the scale was significant. What took my breath away was the life insurance policy. Marcus had taken out a key man life insurance policy on Daniel as co-founder, standard in business partnerships. What wasn't standard was that he had changed the beneficiary designation 8 weeks before the trip. Around the same time, Daniel started building his case. The policy paid out $2.4 million. The civil case against Marcus settled 17 months later. I won't share the specific terms, but I will tell you that his firm lost its operating license, that several of his clients received partial restitution, and that I no longer have any financial concerns for the rest of my life. The criminal investigation was reopened. It is ongoing. I've been told by the prosecutors to be patient. I am learning how to be patient. People ask me sometimes what the hardest part was. It wasn't finding the phone. It wasn't even reading those messages. It wasn't the legal process, which was brutal and slow and expensive in ways I wasn't prepared for. The hardest part was the dinner table. Because for 2 days at that cabin, I sat across from the man who I now believe took my husband's life, and I laughed at his jokes. I complimented his cooking. I talked about buying a vacation property near his, and he looked at me the whole time like I was just a wife. Like I was someone whose future he had already decided. That's the thing about betrayal at this level. It doesn't announce itself. It sits across from you at dinner. It toasts to friendship. It hugs you at the funeral and says all the right things. The only thing that saved me was the same thing that saved Daniel. The instinct to keep looking when something doesn't add up. He kept looking until it was too late. I kept looking until it wasn't. If you're in a situation where something feels wrong, where the official story doesn't match what you know to be true, trust that feeling. Document everything. Say nothing until you have something worth saying. The truth has a way of surfacing. You just have to give it time.